This interview has been conducted for St John Scotland, 75 years of making a difference. My name is Dr Sue Morrison and the respondent is Kenneth Patterson. This is the 25th of November and the interview is taking place in Stranraer. Thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed for the project, Kenny.
No problem.
For the record, would you please confirm your full name?
Yes, certainly. Kenneth George Patterson.
Thank you. And what is your age or just your year of birth?
Sadly, 71.
Oh, you look well on it.
Thank you.
Where were you brought up, Kenny?
Brought up Glasgow, basically. Yes, Glasgow.
And when did you move to this area?
I came down to Galloway in 1973. And I worked in Newton Stewart for about 4 years and started working in Stranraer in 77, and I've worked in Stranraer ever since. I've lived in Stranraer since 1979.
Would you be happy to tell me a little bit about your birth family?
My birth family? My mum and dad. My father was an accountant. He came from the north of Scotland. My mother, she came from Lanark and she was a physiotherapist.
Did you have brothers or sisters?
I have one younger brother. He is 3 years younger than me. He is retired, lives in Paisley, and his occupation, I think, would basically be a charter surveyor. I think he worked with, was it Renfrewshire County Council, something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but he was a surveyor. Yeah.
And what business did you go into after school?
After school? After I left school in 1968, I went to university and did 3 years there studying law. Graduated in 71, did my apprenticeship with a big firm in Glasgow. That was 2 years there, and there was an advert for a position down in Newton Stewart, and I applied for it, and somewhat to my surprise got it. So came down to Newton Stewart, as I said earlier, 1973, worked there until 77, then came through to Stranraer. Yeah.
How was the move from Glasgow?
Different. Different. My mother wondered how I'd be able to come home for tea every night from Newton Stewart, but there we are. It was fine. It was time to have a break. I felt there was maybe a wee bit of rut up in Glasgow, and it was time for a break. So I came down here, and fortunately in Newton Stewart, I suppose, through rugby in some ways, I met the right people, and the rest is history. In fact, one of the people I met, his neighbour was their babysitter, and ultimately we got together, and I've been married to that lady for 40 odd years now. So
what's her name?
Sheena. She's a farmer's daughter from Newton Stewart, so it's quite a wrench actually for her to come through to Stranraer, because there's a wee bit rivalry, I suppose, friendly rivalry between the Rins, which is the western part of Wigtonshire, and the Machers, but no, she settled down very well. Yeah. Can't turn the clock back now anyway.
And are you still working?
Yes, I am still working. Without going into a lot of detail, I probably should have retired, but my son, he had a sort of unsettled life for a number of years, and eventually he decided that he wanted to do law. So he has now passed all his exams through the Law Society as opposed to university. He is currently at Edinburgh University doing his diploma, so I would expect him to be back in Stranraer sort of next summerish time, duly qualified, and Dad will take the advantage to not retire completely, but maybe take more of a back place and wind down, yeah.
So you're planning to have a family business?
I suppose so, yeah.
Excellent. Could you tell me when you first heard about St John Scotland?
I think it would be following upon the death of my former colleague Philip Kerr, so I would think it would be the early 90s, Yeah, I think it'd be there in the 90s. That's when I would first become involved. Yeah.
Who was your first contact?
Well, John Carvert, Dr. John Carvert. He was very nice about it. I wasn't shanghaied in any way at all. But no, it would be John Carvert all these years ago, and say falling upon the death, and he wanted somebody to become involved. And I knew him anyway. And I knew he was a very genuine and very likeable person. So I was quite happy to become involved. Yeah.
John Carvert was the GP in this area?
He was indeed. He was. John Carvert was in general practice in Stranraer. That's right. Yeah.
Did you know his wife?
I do know his wife. His wife Pat. Yes. Did I know them beforehand? Not really. Said son managed to have confrontations with golf clubs periodically, which meant his head was split open, and purely by chance when it went up to casualty it was Dr. John. So we had we had a social professional connection as well. So there you are. But yes, I know Pat, and as you heard briefly, Pat sadly is maybe not 100%, shall we say.
What was your first introduction to St John Scotland?
First introduction was just going along to a routine committee meeting, and I suppose when I got along to these things I just listened and see what's what, and eventually became involved. Clearly it was what they were doing locally was wonderful, really, and it was very soon actually after I became involved that the Queen in fact came to Stranraer, and she was doing a tour of the then Dalrymple Hospital, I think they called it, and within that there were 2 beds for palliative care, and that I think that would be the first sort of major thing I can remember about St John in a big way. Yeah. So I mean that was. I knew you were doing this interview. One of the rooms was called the Stephen Room. I remember that. She was named after one of the nursing sisters who sadly died of cancer. And the other room, I can't remember who it was at all. But no, it was very much a local project. I think it cost, off the top of my head, roughly about £15,000 to set up these rooms. £5,000 I think came from St John. The local Rotary gave £5,000, and there was £5,000 from somebody else. I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but it was set up on that basis anyway. Yeah. Willie Watterson's is coming to talk to you about transport. Willie will be talking more about recent times. I, for the life of me, can't just remember exactly when it would take off. But anyway, John Carvert was a very proactive person, and Stranraer, is geographically isolated. So I think at that time, and I think it's still the case, people that require cancer treatment in essence have to go to the Western General in Edinburgh. And as I understand it, the Fries and Galloway Health Board, or whatever they call themselves, NHS to Fries and Galloway, they have a contract with Lothians and whatever they call it for treatment. The problem was that yes, turn up at the hospital, we'll get you to Edinburgh. Sorry, turn up at the hospital in Fries, we'll get you to Edinburgh. How do people get from Stranraer or the western end of the region to Dumfries? So that was, I take no credit for it, but that was something that picked up by John Carvert. So that's how the transport service started. And I mean, it's been an absolute godsend, and it's been appreciated by so many people, and I don't know how some people have gone without it. It's not exclusively to Dumfries. Sometimes people maybe go to Carlisle for treatment. There's been quite a bit of rumble in the local press about why go to Edinburgh. 9 times out of 10 the bus is leaving from Stranraer. You're going through Glasgow, through the motorway, the hospital in Glasgow, the one in the hospital out in the west end of Glasgow. That's a big cancer centre anyway, and there's been quite a lot of local opinion, I suppose, we're driving past Glasgow and we have to go another 44 or 50 miles to Edinburgh. Why can't we go to Glasgow? So people go to Glasgow, people go to Crosshouse in Kilmarnock as well, they get some treatment there. And on one occasion it was an exceptional thing, but somebody panicked and I'm not sure exactly what it was treatment, but it was very generally cancer orientated, and two of our guys took somebody to Aberdeen and back. Now I think that if it wasn't Christmas Eve, it was more or less at that sort of time. But it just shows the way that St John people, the volunteers, the type of people we have, if someone is someone needs help, let's do what we can. Let's do what we can. So I can't just remember the strict order how transport transport obviously started, and how the palliative care beds. I think that would just be brewing before I became involved, and then once I became involved, I was aware of these facilities, which were absolutely excellent. They really were, and all self-funding by volunteers and money raised by ourselves. We have been exceptionally lucky with financial support locally. The old hospital was knocked down, and as part of the new hospital, the St John unit was to be created, and it was to be a much bigger unit. We would still have the 2 bedrooms, but we'd have a treatment room. I think there was a visitor's room, a relatives room, and a sort of general room where we would have our committee meetings, but the staff could use it for committee meetings as well. So that was created, and the contribution for that was £450,000. However, we have been extremely lucky in that a lady, and I don't think there's any to not name her, Miss Margaret Hamilton had left the local order £150,000. Okay, cancer, Macmillan and cancer. No, was it Macmillan or Macmillan cancer? I can't just remember specifically who it was. They said they would match our £150,000, and the health board put in £150,000 because when all was said and done, such colloquially, they were kicking us out. They were demolishing the facility that we had. So this that then created the new palliative care unit as it exists just now. It has been very, very successful and is greatly appreciated. It's a trying time for friends, relatives, when people are coming towards the ends of life. Quite often there can be a lot of suffering, and we just do as much as we can to mitigate that. The only downside to that is that we created a treatment room, and sadly, how can I put it diplomatically, there perhaps hasn't been the cooperation that we would have liked from those that can provide the chemotherapy to come through and do it in Stranraer. It's just one of these things. Even with general health matters, there is sadly, on the face of it, a reluctance from people to come from Stranraer. They do come through Stranraer, don't get me wrong, and they do clinics. I remember once I was involved, and it was a very, very minor thing, and the guy, he was very kind, said, look, it's a very, very minor thing. The facilities are okay, but if something goes wrong, we don't have the facilities here, so that's why we'd rather have you through in Dumfries if something goes wrong, which we hope it doesn't, obviously. Everything is there to put things right. So that sort of maybe sets the seal there. So that really our core things are obviously keeping the palliative care unit going and transport. I'll leave Willie maybe to deal with the transport, and he will tell you that. Insofar as the unit is concerned, well, the unit is there. We have funds, and I'll come on to that in a minute for you, and we just do our best to keep things updated, refreshed, and just generally make it as comfortable as recently we were guided by the nurses, the medical staff, and we got on very well with them, and if they need things they let us know. just with the passage of time, we've renewed fridges and stuff like that. We've tried to get maybe slightly better televisions. Both units have a balcony outside, and we do our best to sort of maintain it. It can be difficult for, quote, a gardener to go in if there's somebody lying there who's not very well. You can't say, excuse me, go out to pull out some weeds sort of idea. So we try to keep them back on top of that. It's a wooden balcony, so the wood needs treated every so often. So we do our best to keep things going. We're so lucky financially. We don't have a problem. We don't have a problem. Prior to a number of years ago, we were in total control of our finances. I know this is going up to Edinburgh. Edinburgh became more conscious of money, making money, earning interest. So rather than all the areas keeping their money, it was to be under the sort of general control of Edinburgh. So in very general terms, we could have been talking about, under our control, 80, 90, sometimes over £100,000 under our control. And we're getting bequests of like 150. You can see how it builds up. Plus very, very generous donations. Without sounding big-headed, I'm quite well known amongst my colleagues. And if somebody wants to leave money to St John, it's easy done. So we've had donations from them, 5, 20, other people, 5, 20,000 pounds over the years. So that keeps us going. So at this point in time, I think Edinburgh have control of 60 or 70,000 pounds, very roughly. And under our local belt down here, we have roughly, I don't know, 15, 20,000 pounds. So that keeps us going. What are our outlays? Our outlays really are keeping the people carriers going. We started off with one, which would probably be a second-hand one. We've gone through a whole lot now. We renewed one recently, but somewhat unusually, we kept another one because it may well be that people have to go to Dumfries first thing on a Monday morning, but you maybe get a request, can we take somebody to Glasgow? You can't be in two places at once. So we have kept two, and they're not on the go all the time, but it's amazing how often they're needed. Going back to ever so slightly, as you probably know, St John has, I think, 12 areas in Scotland. Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Dumfries and Galloway was an area on its own, but we got on very well with our colleagues in Dumfries, but we decided eventually that we would become separate. They get on with the Dumfries end because they have certain things that they can deal with there. We deal with things here. So we are now trading as the West Galloway branch at St John, and Dumfries are, I think they just call themselves Dumfries, all with the cover on and all the areas down there. So some of the vehicles we had, we sort of passed them on to them, but they've now started to generate money. Plus, as I think you know, St John have entered into an arrangement with Ford, I think, and Ford are now providing vehicles. So eventually, Dumfries, I think, got their own vehicle funded centrally. We, in fact, because we are quite wealthy, I think we deemed it might be a bit cheeky to go to Edinburgh and say, look, would you give us 23,000 so we can buy a new vehicle when we're sitting with maybe 100,000 in the bank. So, we are self-funding. We are self-funding in many ways. When it comes to transport, while I was going on about Dumfries, the chairman of Dumfries is a guy, Mike Cook, who was very much involved in the medical world as administrator within hospitals. I don't know whether you'll be interviewing him in due course, but he can tell you exactly who he is. But he got in touch with the health board, and in fact now we get paid so much per mile when we're taking people to Dumfries and Edinburgh. So that a lot depends on how much travelling we do, but quite regularly we can get anything £600-700 up to £1,000 depending how much. So obviously that goes into the kitty and that helps to pay our fuel costs. Those been travelling to and from, the vast majority of people are very grateful, very thankful, and will get cheques, cash, etc. It can vary from £5, it can be £25, you can check for £100. Everything is appreciated. Some people can afford more than others. The £5 is every much as welcome and appreciated as £100. I can think of a lady too, a retired social worker, and they have some function quote at Christmas, and every Christmas without fail an envelope's handed into the office with £100. So the people are very, very generous, so we don't have a funding problem. In addition to funding the transport and the palliative care unit, we also assist with hospice at home. Some people quite naturally want to spend their latter days at home, and basically speaking, I think the Macmillan nurses will go in and do their business, so to speak. The health board, I think, are charged by Macmillan for doing that. The health board then send me an invoice and we pay it. So again, we're doing a bit for palliative care. We don't maybe get we're not really too involved. A lot depends on who's administrating, who the administrator is. A number of years ago it was a particular administrator, and she was very good and kept us fully advised. It ticks over, we get the bill, we pay it. I think if there's a particular demand for, let's say, a specialist mattress or something like that, we would do our best to help them out. So hospice at home, it's been going on for many years. A number of years ago too, we had, in essence, a unit nurse. Now I think, did she work 2 days with NHS and 3 days for her, and we paid her salary accordingly. And again, that worked out very well. She was very, very attentive, and we felt it was a hands-on thing, obviously, in the unit. But eventually she had to go back into full-time nursing. I think she an academic, well, she was doing a project, I think, so that sort of suited her fine. But that stopped quite a few years ago, which was unfortunate, but the unit functions and all the nurses out there are very, very helpful, very helpful. If the hospital is busy and the unit is not being used, there's no problem. A patient can be put in there if need be, but sadly, a sign of the times, the unit is kept pretty busy all the time, and inevitably it's cancer orientated. I suppose the bulk of the work is cancer orientated, but not exclusively. I would never like to see people struggle. I think the only time that we've really had to maybe quote a strong line and say no is that they did say to us, look, could you maybe help ophthalmic patients to maybe travel to the clinic in Dumfries? And we said, well, as volunteer drivers, if we're taking cancer patients, that's our first priority. Sorry, no. Dumfries, they are involved with kidney dialysis or dialysis. They've got a much smaller area, so it's easier for them to do it. It would be quite difficult for us. It's all very well sort of leaving Stranraer, travelling 2 or 3 hours, but then to sit around for, it can be 5 or 6 hours, as you know, for dialysis. It really wasn't very practical. Although I think that St John in general are very much involved. I think especially up in Tayside, they're very active up in Tayside, and I think they're doing dialysis, but I think they've got a bigger population up there. They're using private cars, so I think they're working that way with the dialysis thing. We have used private cars here in emergencies to take people to and from. Somebody have to go to Dumfries, or somebody's go to Glasgow. I would just simply pay the driver's expenses in these circumstances. So I think that's maybe a well-known tour. I'm sure I must have missed plenty of things, but no doubt you can pick me up if you want to ask any specific questions.
That was brilliant, thank you. I wasn't expecting all that.
There you are.
You've mentioned quite a lot there.
Yep.
I know that there's the Galloway Mountain Rescue in this area.
Yep.
Does St John Scotland West Galloway support them?
Yes, we did. We did. This is because so much has happened over the years. It's just as well you've got some prior notes. Yeah, the mountain rescue team is based in Newton Stewart. Well, there is a unit based in Newton Stewart anyway, and the old ambulance depot in Newton Stewart was sold by the owner of said base, and it was sold to the mountain rescue people for £1, I think it was. St John's, Scotland thereafter became involved, and in essence we funded the fitting out of the unit. And now, is it right that we West Galloway take credit for funding? It was certainly funded by St John. I can't honestly remember whether it was through West Galloway exclusively or through Edinburgh nationally. Edinburgh nationally would soon tell you if we were trying to claim credit for something which we weren't entitled to. But yes, I do remember it, and I remember in fact going along to the opening ceremony, so to speak, and it was certainly a lot of the local committee there. But there were people from Edinburgh. In particular, I think the late Sir Malcolm Ross, who was a lovely fellow, who was our prior. I'm pretty sure he was there that day. And about that same time, they also funded an inshore lifeboat for the Nith. Was it down at Glencapel, perhaps? Again, it was generally through St John. Whether it was exclusively through Dumfries and Galloway, I'm not too sure. But I think, was that about £16,000 or something? I'm not sure. I think actually it was a joint project with, had a widow maybe left money and so much. I'm not sure of the detail. But again, just local causes where, you know, we could help, or St John can help. They're very receptive to these sort of things. It's a small community, everybody tries to help one another, so if it's not necessarily within our strict parameters, well, yeah, why not? Yeah.
Could you tell me what you think are the main challenges for St John Scotland, or have been in the past?
Because I'm sort of past my prime, so to speak, maybe perhaps wrongly, I'm maybe not totally involved in the future. I'm focused very much personally on making sure that transport and the unit in Stranraer continue to get the support which they undoubtedly deserve. We are in a society now where there are more and more demands for money, and more charities have very worthy causes, and I suppose there's got to be a certain amount of aggression in quotes whereby people say, look, we need the money, that and so on. So yeah, just making sure we get money to keep things going. Perhaps of a more direct challenge, I think, is trying to motivate maybe youngsters to become involved. Inevitably the committee is perhaps people that are getting on in life. However, I would like to think that we would maybe manage to get people, our motorists is very good. While it's maybe not the ideal situation, you want to get people involved. One of the, I think, worst things of trying to get people involved, if they think, come in, look, we're going to have to organise some fundraising venture, and they maybe have to go to do this and do that and all this, which can be time consuming, quite demanding, very frustrating. Fortunately, we don't maybe have that, and the money is there. What we're really wanting is young, sensible people who appreciate the objectives that we have, and for them to carry on the management of that and ensure it is preserved for the benefit of the community. Yeah.
How do you think youngsters could be enticed into St John Scotland?
I think in this part of the world, by word of mouth. I think perhaps, in essence, the committee have to identify young people who they think have the appropriate qualities to become involved, and for them to be approached. I think I'd be moderately surprised if somebody was approached and didn't know a bit about St John, because the St John unit is well known. Everybody reads the Free Press, and if somebody dies in the unit, it's mentioned, so it's getting mentioned all the time. Every time we've got a new vehicle on the go, we've always had a sort of presentation, and there's always been a photograph in the local paper. So it does have a profile. It does have a profile. So on that basis, if you go to somebody as I'm suggesting, hopefully they'll know something about it, and just try and persuade them to become involved. Quite often, of course, the people that you want to get involved already have a whole lot of commitments, which may make it harder for them. But the committee meet once every 3 or 4 months. It's not particularly onerous. It's well established, and it sort of runs like clockwork. Most of the time. Most of the time.
Do you think that the way that volunteers become members and then are promoted through the ranks might be used or possibly changed to encourage younger people to participate, given that many of them do have careers and they're trying to advance their careers and that kind of thing?
I'm not too sure I can answer for the younger generation. Do they want S. St John, O. St John, Commander St John? Do they want that after their name? Yeah, I think it's probably. I mean, anybody that provides something, it's nice for them to be rewarded. I mean, I think the making of awards with St John over the years has tightened up, and just because you come to a committee meeting, but thereafter sit with your hands in your pockets and don't do anything, I don't think you should automatically get something. Some people just don't want to become with St John, so they now have, I think, this category of people that they're not sort of members of St John, but they help. A volunteer driver would maybe be a good example, that they're recognised and they get some recognition for that. And I remember when I was presiding at the AGMs, there were quite a lot of occasions when we gave certificates to drivers, usually because they had completed a number of years' service, or perhaps they're even retiring. So yeah, if people become involved, yes, I think it's certainly very important that that is recognised. Whether or not it's a matter of importance to them that they get initials after their name is perhaps something for them to decide upon. Maybe not so important as it perhaps once was. But no, yeah, I think there's got to be recognition of some form or another, yeah.
Can you tell me about some of the people that you've worked with over the years?
The sort of fellow committee members? Yeah.
Just add a bit of colour and flavour to it.
Well, the principal driver obviously was John Calvert, who was, as you know, a doctor locally, a GP. So he was hands-on when it came to cancer, and could perhaps identify where there were shortcomings. He identified the transport problem, and certain issues might arise with the health board that we had to perhaps see whether we could help, so to speak. So yeah, other committee members, well, obviously we like to have an accountant on board to deal with accountants, the books, etc. Although books are now largely centralised in Edinburgh when it comes to the annual accounts, etc. And then of course the Charities Regulations or the Charities Act makes things more formal, shall we say, and that's obviously dealt with centrally in Edinburgh. Who have we had? I don't think, apart from the obvious, we've never really gone after people of a particular vocation or profession. We maybe go after people that we think are, sort of sympathetic, kindly individuals who would would support and help the sort of general principles, the general things which we want to make sure work, and that they would be able to help and help things driving forward. I'll make sure things keep going. I think. Yeah. We'll get some very active committee members and some less so, but those that may be less so, you can still rely upon them to do certain things. We've got the drivers. The majority of them are not on the committee. Willie Watterson, he comes along and he relays things on. Alison Chalmers, she sort of looks after the unit, and she has a whole dose of lady helpers, shall we say. What did lady helpers do? The lady helpers basically make sure that within the relatives room, the big kitchen in the unit, there's plenty of tea, coffee, biscuits, etc., etc. I think too we get, maybe there's a what do they call it? There's a gallery magazine that comes out once a month, and we make sure that's there, and just trying to make things as helpful as possible, as pleasant as possible for those that find themselves in a very unpleasant situation, sadly. For what it's worth, my wife, I think she's got a fortnight, I think she does. So there's maybe about a pool of about 20. There could be 20 odd ladies, and if it's just a fortnight, just snipping up the hospital, look, could you go up and top up biscuits, etc. Most people are absolutely delighted to help. They feel as though they're doing something. It's a good cause. They're quite happy. Yeah. So Alison knows who's there, and I think she maybe emails a list maybe at the beginning of the year, but it works out very well. Yeah. So Alison, she was a teacher. Yes, we have sundry teachers that are there. The minutes secretary at one time was a medical secretary, so again there was that. The current chairman is Alison Burns, who was, I'm not sure what her official title was, but she was head administrator in the hospital here, so she can be very, very useful as well. So yeah, very broad spectrum. I think we're maybe going for a quality of person, a reliability insofar as that person is concerned, rather than saying we must have a policeman, da-da-da-da-da. So not anything against policemen, I hate to say, if they're the right personality, character. Yeah, absolutely fine.
Would you say that the majority or all of the members, the inducted members, have some kind of religious background?
Some have, some haven't. I'm a member of the church, but I can't really actually remember us going to a communion. My communion on Sunday mornings out on the golf course. I think there'll be a bit. Pat Calvert is very much involved with St John Church here. Izzy Irving, who is our publicity officer, I suppose, I know she's very much involved in. I think they call it. I'm not sure what they call it. There's really only one church in Stranraer, Trinity Church and Highkirk combined, and I'm not sure what they call themselves. So she has a religious connection. I'm sure some of them will go to church, but perhaps some will be more regular than others. Yeah, but we've got there's no sort of religious implications or anything. We don't go to, we don't. You have to be a member of a church to become involved. Certainly not at all. And it's not just Church of Scotland. There's Episcopalians. And indeed, one of our committee members, a retired doctor from Sandhead, she, I believe, was a nun at one time, so she obviously would be a Catholic, but so what? Big deal, doesn't affect us. Again, she's very helpful and is quite happy to get towed in with arguments with the health board. So don't pull the wool over my eyes. I'm a doctor, I know what I'm talking about, sort of idea. So yeah.
Thank you. What would you say are your most vivid memories of the time that you've spent with St John Scotland?
My vivid memories? Okay, just from the very first moment I've been totally committed to the objectives which they have, and it's been an absolute delight to see how they've expanded and developed and how they're very much appreciated, and despite my aging years, people will still ask me, are you still involved with St John? I'm surprised you're still involved. I say, well, look, you know, it's an organisation, I have a lot of time for it, and that's it. Equally, I use it nasty, devious way. No, inevitably your approach, would you mind helping? Would you do this? Would you do that? Say, look, I've just time for one charity, and it's St John. So that has been in some ways handy, and I hope that doesn't sound horrible, but there you are. It's a useful get-out card. Yeah, memories, obviously, I suppose, seeing the Queen, albeit she was maybe, she didn't speak to me, but she was probably not quite as close as you are, but certainly the chair when she walked through the then unit. Seeing the new unit getting up and going was obviously a great achievement. Somewhat disappointed maybe it hasn't been used to its maximum potential, but that's not our fault, we've done our best. Yes, the opening of the Mountain Rescue Service in Newton Stewart was good because they do a fantastic job. These I think, and I've been to quite a few festivals now, the annual festival, and that is certainly very much a religious thing, but I've no qualms about going there. I don't feel a hypocrite. I go there, and it's nice meeting other people. Just as in law, sometimes you have to go to seminars, etc., and it's the only way you keep in touch. So it's quite nice meeting people of a like mind, and I've always found them very cordial, very friendly. My wife has accompanied me on a few occasions. My daughter, in fact, came once, and she was suitably impressed, I suppose. But yes, yeah, these would be the highlights, I suppose. Yeah.
You mentioned there the other areas.
Yeah.
Do you have much contact with them?
No. No. When I was chairman of, well, it was Dumfries and Galloway, was the whole area. There were, they had area committee meetings when the chairman went up to Edinburgh, and there was a powwow which I tried my best to go, but I was working full time, and it's quite a trail up to Edinburgh and back, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. So in that sense, yes, there was some contact. We very much operate within our own area. We've got our own agenda, and we get on with things. One or two people have maybe approached us and have asked for some guidance as to how the transport service was set up, etc., etc. And it was quite a few years ago. I can't just remember exactly what the umbrella was, but I think it was a sort of general seminar about transport, and I was invited along to give a presentation paper, etc., how it started at Dumfries and Galloway. So I remember doing that. That was the Inshire Hotel near Falkirk. It was quite a few years ago. But I suppose the template for transport revolves around how Dumfries and Galloway kicked off. Yeah, and the reason why it was done. Yeah.
Do you think it would be beneficial to have more contact with the other areas? Yeah,
certainly. Yeah, I don't see any objection. It's just a question of whether or not people have the time to attend. My recollection is that of the chairman there, the majority were perhaps maybe not retired, but getting to that sort of stage. But the likes for technology, Zoom, etc., could do a lot of that. A lot will depend on how the powers that be see St John developing, and it may well be that there has to be more interaction between the various areas. I'm not saying we wouldn't become involved, it's not up to me to decide, but our fundamental focus is our palliative care transport and the unit, and indeed hospice at home. Yeah, and that was why we, I think, politely declined to become involved in dialysis. There was also a first responder scheme which I think started up in Tayside. I think we decided the practicalities of that, the logistical distance between places just made that impossible. That aside, I think St John were very much involved in the defibrillators, and we locally have contributed some money to various organisations for defibrillators. I think the Mountain Rescue perhaps got one, and I'm sure there were others. So, as I say, if somebody approached us with a cause, we need a defibrillator, I think we'd almost be saying yes to that. I think the Rotary provided one in the centre of the town. So yeah, again, locally, good cause, it'll be supported, whether it's under St John or under some other umbrella.
Do you think that there have been any particular issues affecting St John Scotland over the years?
Particular issues?
Particular issues.
Not locally, no. Locally, no. Nationally, it would be up to Edinburgh to see what the position was. I've never had any problems with Edinburgh. I think does a prior sit for 6 years? 6 years a prior? 3 years. I think 6 years. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So you're getting people coming in, and I think that's probably a good thing, because things don't become stale, stereotypes, so things move on. And yeah, I'm sure that if somebody advances a potential project and it's commendable, I'm sure it will be supported. Particular issues, don't think so. I'm unaware of any scandal. If you can tell me any, that'd be wonderful. But no, I don't think so. No. There's been a wee bit of a turnover of staff in Edinburgh. I don't know enough about it, but a wee bit frustrating. You get to know somebody and you deal with them, and the next moment, no, they're no longer with us. Sort of idea. That can be a wee bit temporarily frustrating, but life moves on. And that's basically it.
Do you think that the order has changed over the years of your involvement?
Locally, probably not that much. I suppose, dare I say it, we are set in our ways because we've got our projects and they take over. Nationally, yes, I think it probably has changed in that you've got Angus Loudon is now the chief executive. I'm not exactly sure what the person that did his quote job beforehand. I'm not sure they were called the chief executive, but they all bring in their own sort of characteristics. I think, having said that, the sort of we talked about religious connections before. The sort of chief executive, I think, have come from the services. There was the first guy was an awfully nice guy. He was a Navy man. Angus is from the Army, and I can't remember who was in between. The priors quite often have military connections, although I think the new prior is the Duchess of Argyll, isn't it? And I'm not sure that she had any military connections, but Sir Mark Studwick, her predecessor, he was certainly military. Previous to that was Sir Malcolm Ross, who was certainly military, and he was he the Queen's Equerry or something like that? A hell of a nice guy. I was very sorry to hear when he had passed away. And the prior before that, James Gardner, he certainly had military connections. So the sort of the priors seem to come from a certain circle, I suppose, and that's because people, those that are looking for somebody, will perhaps say, well, look, I can identify a person. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they've ever advertised in the Scotsman or what, the Sun or wherever. I don't think they've ever advertised for a particular individual. It may well be, however, secretarial staff. It may well be they advertise for them. I have no idea. I think a lot of the sort of secretarial staff, I think a lot of them are part-time anyway. Yeah, but no doubt Edinburgh can tell you the ins and outs of that.
Do you think that St John Scotland needs to be improved in any way, and if so, how?
Nobody can stand still. You've got to try and keep moving forward. Exactly how they do that, I'm not sure. They are now trying to get a profile nationally. It was also a matter of some disappointment that St John literally gave the mountain rescue people an absolute fortune. That started off primarily by let's see, St John up in Aberdeen had they sold some building, and it must have been some building for millions of pounds, and eventually what they started to do was use some of the money to buy vehicles for the mountain rescue people. And because I knew St John, it always irritated me that you could see a mountain rescue team or a new mountain rescue station opening. There was a St John logo on that, and nothing was ever said. I know they've had various publicity people, PR people, and I think they are trying to get things. And now they've moved on a bit in that, well, we know that Newton Stewart was the base there was provided, largely funded by St John. Moffat, I think there's one there as well. I don't think they maybe completely funded Moffat as such, but they certainly refurbished it. And Newton Stewart and Moffat have certainly had vehicles. And I think there's a bit of publicity being generated, and people are maybe becoming a wee bit more. We always get frustrated in that people at St John, oh, you're the ambulance people, which of course I think St John down in England, I'm not aware of the technicalities down there, but I think St John, comparing it to sort of us at Stranraer, are more linked with the ambulance people down there, whereas up here we're totally independent. But equally, I'm sure if the ambulance people got in touch with us and needed something, that I'm sure would help. I mean, I think it used to be very frustrating if an ambulance went down from Stranraer to Dumfries. Does anybody need a lift back? There was no problem, but nowadays that simply doesn't happen. I won't say St John would rush down to bring somebody back, but they'd be more amenable to helping out, given due notice, and getting a driver available, and a car, perhaps. So yeah, move on? Yeah, maybe get a higher profile. It's always difficult because different areas have different priorities, different requirements, but if there was perhaps, let's say there was a national project, right, palliative care, we will get people to hospital, yeah, that might be a good thing. It all costs money, and how does that work? When you're relying on volunteers, something can be up and running one day, you just need somebody to fall and break their leg or something like that, things go into turmoil. But yes, perhaps moving forward, try and get a higher profile. We do a lot of good work. We should, without bragging about it, we should maybe get some credit for it, and try and use that to our advantage. And maybe by using that, people would see, look, this is a bona fide organisation, they really do a lot of good. Yeah, I wouldn't mind helping out. And there are people out there who would be quite happy to help you. Equally, there are people out there that might want to become involved, and you don't want to become involved, but one of the beauties down here is we tend to know what's going on. Yep.
What are your hopes for the future of St John?
My hopes for the future, that it carries on. I can really only speak for Dumfries and Galloway. Hope palliative care continues, hope transport continues, that hospital home continues. They're all very much appreciated, totally worthwhile, and that would be my major hope. St John nationally, yes, we're part of a big family, and I would wish them well and hopefully go from strength to strength. We've got different areas, as I've said, we've got different priorities in these areas. If we can consolidate things and maybe have a national project that would give us a national profile, that would undoubtedly help, no doubt. And I think they're working away at that. I'm sure they are. I think, did I see Kayleigh? I think she's trying to sort of lift things, and hopefully she'll be successful. Yeah.
Can you sum up what you think is the best thing about St John Scotland?
My Latin is pretty vague nowadays, but I think the motto, the faith and all the rest of it, yeah, I think that in many ways sums it up. The willingness to contribute towards the community and do something positive. It's not give and take. Yes, we will take to advance our causes, but anything we take, hopefully we give back and more into the community. I think we perhaps sum it up in some ways.
I think that's all my questions. Have I missed anything?
Right, no, I don't think so. There's only one thing that occurred to me, and I don't know where it falls in. For years and years we had an art exhibition in Stranraer, and we invited local artists to come along and display their paintings, and we had it in various venues, and it was quite a good fundraiser. We could get £1,700–1,800, but inevitably it was the same artists. Not that, I mean, they always produce lovely stuff, but it was local people, and people liked to support. And my wife and I went along, but eventually you can only buy so many paintings, and you've only so much room, and it unfortunately did eventually come to an end. The lady that sort of organised it did an awful lot of good work, and eventually she said, look, I'm sort of beginning to swim against the tide here, it's getting harder and harder, and say, look, it's a voluntary thing, you know, you've done your best, look, you've not to put any pressure on yourself. So that's maybe disappointment. Well, like, it was a sad end. It came to a natural end, and that was it. It came to a natural end. And I think other organisations periodically have art exhibitions and do that. I know that Glasgow had a very big one, and I mean, they literally raised thousands of pounds. But I think that only lasted 2 or 3 years. Again, it's the same sort of people that are coming along. You've only so many, only so much room for hooks in your walls. And I say that maybe came to me. But I think that's the only thing that maybe has come to mind regarding St John over the last period. Yep.
Well, that's us done. Thank you
Okay.
very much, Kenny. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good. Well, hopefully give me
for
some.
sharing your memories.
Yes, I suppose they are memories in some ways, but yes.